We have witnessed a number of violent confrontations between protesters and police over the past few days, as well as scenes of looting and vandalism. But we should note that most of this week's demonstrations have been largely peaceful. Several officials, including Attorney General Bill Barr, accused outside radical groups of hijacking protests in order to promote a separate agenda. CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist Antjuan Seawright joins me now. Antjuan, in addition to the Attorney General, there are many people who are saying that these protesters are taking actions that do not honor the memory of George Floyd. Tell us what you're seeing.
I see a number of things. I see a number of things, and I feel a number of things. I feel what Langston Hughes wrote in 1920 in his masterpiece, Mother to Son, where the piece opens by saying, "Life for us ain't been no crystal stair." I think that's what Black people feel all across this country. Truth be told, this is just another example of why the water has been boiling for a very long time, and it seems as if the pot, the water is running over out of the pot, and we're starting to see that play out. There's so much unrest from South Carolina to California because Black people are being put to rest at the hands of law enforcement who do not look like them. And I think that's the issue. And if you're not sober about the moment we're in, it's because you're not connected to the reality. In this country, we have a history of sweeping these things under the rug. And as a result, America now has lumps in her carpet. So in the midst of COVID-19 running rapid, disproportionately impacting African Americans, you now have another example of a Black man being killed at the hands of law enforcement for simply doing what he was asked to do.
The quote, "a riot is the language of the unheard" from Martin Luther King has been getting traction on social media. There's now a debate over Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of nonviolent protests. What are some people saying?
Well, you know, people conveniently borrow quotes from Martin Luther King to make them fit whatever agenda they have for the moment. If the same people who are using the King quote, as some of those people I've seen, would apply his principles to their everyday life, perhaps we would not be experiencing some of the unrest we experience in this country. But I do believe in the idea of King, John Lewis, Jim Clyburn, and so many people in the movement of peaceful protest. I'll give you the best example is for me personally. My grandmother's grandfather, Reverend Moses Butler Felder, who was a traveling sharecropping preacher during his day, saved his money, purchased some land, built a church not far from South Carolina State University, the South Carolina's only historical Black college and university. Shortly after the church was built, it was burnt down as part of some of the church burning during that day. My family and others in the community who were expected to go to that church, they did not respond with violence. They did not tear down the things they needed for survival in their communities. They did not attack the people, even though they were attacked. They simply gathered together, they prayed, they went back to work, rebuilt the church. Now that church is named after my grandmother's grandfather. It's called the Butler Chapel AME Church in South Carolina. My dear friend and mentor, the Reverend Senator Clemente Pinckney, was killed by a white supremacist, Dylan Roof, almost 5 years ago. We did not respond with violence. We did not respond by spray painting and doing all the things, some of the things we see now. We responded at the legislative level. We took down the Confederate battle flag. Walter Scott, another example. Charleston, South Carolina, was murdered by a cop, shot from behind. And guess what? As a result of that, we took our frustration and anger again to the legislative branch. South Carolina, as a result, was one of the first states in the union to now have the body cameras. And so there are ways to channel our energy and anger to really make a difference to prevent some of these things from happening.
Well, I wonder, Antjuan, though, I mean, what a proud legacy. Thank you for sharing it with us. But what do you say to people who argue that peaceful protest hasn't resulted in enough actual change in this country?
Well, I think there are always going to be people who have levels of frustration. These problems did not happen overnight, so they will not be fixed overnight. But you also have to be reminded, every time we burn down a restaurant in the community or a store or whatever it is, that's someone who perhaps may look like me, who's already behind the 8 ball for generations because of generational things, who may not be able to go to work to get a paycheck. When we incite violence, we send the wrong message that we do not want to adopt King's principles. Martin Luther King was, from everything I read and seen and heard about him, he was never one to incite violence. He did it the right way. My hero, Jim Clyburn and John Lewis, I spoke to both of them over the past couple of days. They have the same principle. Respond in a real way. And the truth of the matter is, the way we best respond is to channel that energy and anger online, pick up the virtual clipboards, make sure we register people to vote, and make sure we channel our energy the right way so we can make a difference and have people in place to look out for our interests at a leadership level.
Well, and exactly on that note, Antjuan, my last question for you. In times like these, Americans are obviously looking for a leader. I'm wondering how you think this might factor into the 2020 presidential race.
Oh, I think it's going to play a big role and impact, and it's going to make a hell of a difference, to be quite frank and honest with you. The one thing I know about politics, you cannot govern if you do not win. And so we're having lots of conversations in my party about what this election will mean for African Americans, what our candidates' agenda will mean. We can have all the discussions about the agenda that Joe Biden and every other Democrat has for our community. But if we do not show up and we do not win, it's going to be the agenda of Donald Trump and Mike Pence and the Republican Party that will further put generations of African Americans and brown people behind even more. And so I think it's going to have impact. I'm hopeful and prayerful that the same energy and impact and unrest we see around the country over the past several days, that will continue and be channeled in a different way, and that energy will be transferred to the ballot box. Because as my friend, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus says, Black people are casting a survival vote in 2020. And I believe that with all my heart, mind, and soul.
Well, Antjuan, we knew we were going to get an opportunity for you to get your Democratic strategist hat on. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Lana.